Now when you look at this, it is talking about postmodernism and it is asking about the notion of deconstruction. Now when you look at postmodernism, what is the basic tenet of postmodernism? If I have to simply tell you, postmodernists believe that everything is radical. And they say that any sort of fieldwork that has been done is what? Any sort of fieldwork that has been done is all bogus. Right? That is what is their belief. No fieldwork is true because every fieldwork is determined by some majoritarian section of the society, and they see that colonial powers happen to be the majoritarian society. And they don't find any element of objectivity to be seen. And more than anything, they fundamentally opposed what? Logocentrism. They fundamentally opposed logocentrism. And when you look at this fundamental opposition with respect to logocentrism, logocentrism means what? They opposed that any logic which is seen to be existing, has an element of loyalty which is present. And this loyalty is centered around the logic of the majority. And as they have deconstructed the theory of logocentrism, they said that any theory, any fieldwork which has to be done, it should not be done with logocentrism, but it has to be done with aphoria. Right? So that is one fundamental aspect with respect to Jacques Derrida's understanding of deconstruction theory. And not only this dimension, he not only talks about this, he also says that everything that is existing is subjective. And they believe in power dynamics. They believe in power dynamics. Now when you look at this dimension of power dynamics, what do you observe? In the context of power dynamics, whatever is the sort of research, whatever is the sort of logic that is observed in the context of the field work, it is all driven by a superior power. And the superior power happens to be the colonial power, because it is an obligation to find, it is an obligation to align the ideology and the logic in line with the colonial powers, because they are financing the research. So that means they are talking about what? That whole of the fieldwork that has been done so far is ethnocentric in nature. And they said that nothing is objective, everything is seen to be subjective. They in fact talked about the deconstruction of the theory of truth. Right? They say nothing is true, because everything that is present is driven by the power dynamic. Yes, everything that is determined by is driven by power dynamic. Now you are sitting silently in class because I am there. Why? Because this is driven by power dynamic. Now by looking at this, if I think that you people are silent, is it justified? Impossible. That will be an ethnocentric observation. So that means you observe that there is an element of power dynamic which is existing here. So that is what is discussed. Next, multi-factor trait. Now when you observe this multi-factor trait, what is it asking about? It is categorically talking about non-Mendelian inheritance. Because I see Mendelian inheritance and non-Mendelian inheritance. In Mendelian inheritance, one factor is responsible for one trait. Theory of unit factor. Right? Law of unit factor. But in non-Mendelian inheritance, I see 5 different kinds of conditions to be existing in non-Mendelian. One is the epigenetics. The second one is codominance and incomplete dominance. The other dimension that you see in the context of non-Mendelian inheritance is with respect to the dimensions of multiple allelism, genetic polymorphism. These are the 5 different conditions that I see. They are the exceptions. They are the exceptions to Mendelian inheritance. And in this context, what are they asking? They are asking about multi-factor trait. That means there are multiple factors which are resultant for a particular trait. For example, the skin color. For example, the hair color. For example, the morphology of the hair. For example, the nose. For example, the eye color. Now all of these are what material. You would have heard about morphological criteria of racism in 9.5. All of those dimensions are not a single factor, but they are determined by multiple factors. There are multiple factors which are seen to be existing, and because of this multiple factor, a particular trait is determined. So that is what is supposed to be seen, and that is what I think whole of your 9.6, if you write, you can happily manage this question. 9.6 with combination of 9.5 and some basic conceptual reference of 9.2. That is your Mendelian genetics and Mendelian inheritance. Right? That can be discussed. Next. applicability of various sampling techniques in selecting the study group. Now I see different sampling techniques, for example discrete, sequential, insequential, right, point sampling. There are 5 to 6 different sampling methods which are existing. They are asking about the significance of this, right. It's more of a statistical question than anthropology. That is the last line of your chapter 8, that is the fieldwork chapter. There you see the sampling techniques which are present.